want to start with the crime update for the month to date versus the same time last year and the year to date crime numbers. Because of the brave and courageous efforts of our Chicago police officers in coordination with, actually in collaboration with our Community Safety Coordination Center, month to date, that's July to July 2021, homicides are down 44%, and shootings are down 26%. That's July 1st through the 11th versus the 2022 versus that same period in 2021. The year to date, that's January to July, homicides that are down 14%, and shootings are down 18%. That's January to July 2022 versus 2021. In our top 55 beats, also called our 5 community areas, homicides are down 27%, and shootings are down 33%. Those are the areas, primarily on the south and west sides of the city, that drive over half of our gun violence. Officers have recovered 6,665 guns so far this year. That's a 4% increase over the guns recovered last year. As you'll recall, last year was a record year for gun recoveries for the Chicago Police Department. Citywide, officers have arrested 723 offenders for carjacking-related offenses, and we will continue working hard to protect the people of Chicago. Officers have also made more than 3,000 gun arrests this year. And when our officers recover firearms, that's a potential life saved. And when officers put on their uniform, they do so not knowing what the day might bring, particularly confronting armed individuals. Officers serve despite the risk to themselves and their families, serve right along with them. 34 officers have been shot or shot this year, 7 of which were struck by gunfire. On duty or off duty, officers face unknown dangers. On Saturday, an off-duty Chicago police officer was shot. Each of the offenders involved have been arrested and charged and will be held accountable. But that situation just speaks to the occurrence of gun violence in our country. Guns should not be available to individuals who shouldn't have them. Guns should not be used to settle arguments or disagreements. Chicago's communities cannot and will not be held captive by senseless gun violence. The department has family liaison officers in each of our areas that investigate homicides, that help keep families of homicide victims informed of their case's progress and connects them to other support services. The fight to end gun violence remains a national issue and requires all of us to step up. Yesterday, First Deputy Carter and I joined President Joe Biden and a host of civic and law enforcement leaders from across the country, including a lot from Chicago, quite a few from Chicago. We marked the signing of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, one of the most significant pieces of gun legislation in our country these last 30 years. This legislation is a major step in the right direction, mandating enhanced review processes, penalties for straw purchasing, and widespread investment across schools and communities to include mental health services. This act aims to keep guns off of our streets and out of the hands of individuals who shouldn't have them. And it recognizes the link between public safety, public health, and growing community trust. That's also what our work with the Community Safety Coordination Center is all about. Our partnership with CSCC has been instrumental in our public safety efforts in neighborhoods across Chicago. Working to stop gun violence and make this city safer means ensuring communities' voices are heard and their ideas are heard as part of this conversation. Chicago Police Department will always strive towards more visibility, more engagement, and more collaboration. Now, with that, I'd like to bring up Chief Coordination Officer Tamara Mahal to talk more about the work that we're doing. Tamara.
Thank you, Superintendent Brown, and thank you to our federal partners for taking steps to keep our communities safe. As Congress and states take action to enforce stricter gun laws at the federal level, we continue to work with our community partners to address the root causes of violence locally. Today, I'd like to provide an update on some of the near-term initiatives that our Community Safety Coordination Center has launched to address violence this summer, and provide an update on where we're at, especially as we are about halfway through summer. Keep in mind that our near-term initiatives range from efforts to raise awareness about the impacts of gun violence, that these are not just numbers, but human lives that are lost with loved ones who miss them dearly, but also to ensure that our residents have the tools that they need to feel safe, and that, importantly, our direct service providers who work locally on the ground every day with our Chicago Police Department have access to the skills that they need and the tools that they need in order to effectively do their job. I just want to start by talking about the Ripple Effect, which is our gun violence awareness marketing campaign. I'm pleased to announce that when the Ripple Effect was launched in June, we have seen phenomenal results in terms of our efforts to utilize marketing to raise awareness. So far, we've generated over 7 million social media impressions. We've seen a lot of positive response to our installations that are located on park trails on the north, west, and south side. And importantly, we've heard great feedback from an important community in the violence prevention world, our gun violence survivor community, that they're grateful to see more voices being lifted up and more stories being lifted up that recognize the ripple effects, the long-term effects that are experienced not just by those directly impacted by gun violence, but those indirectly as well. If you haven't had a chance to go check out the installations or want to see more information on that, please go to chicago.gov/ripple effect. As many people know, we launched another initiative in early June called the Home and Business Protection Program. This is for anyone who lives or operates a business in the city of Chicago, for them to be reimbursed for certain security equipment, including outdoor cameras, outdoor motion sensor lighting, and GPS vehicular tracking devices. I wanted to update that to date, we have received over 2,100 applications for the program. That includes over 1,700 applications for security cameras, over 300 applications to increase lighting, and over 100 applications for GPS tracking devices. These are devices that not only help people to secure their own property, but we hope will also aid in future investigations if crime occurs outside a home in partnership with the Chicago Police Department. We do expect that checks for the first round of applications will start being mailed next week. We look forward to sharing the success stories with you all. As a reminder, this program is first come, first served, currently scheduled to run through December or until funds are depleted, but I'll say we're not quite there yet. So if you're interested in going out to get a device, please do. You can find more information at chicago.gov/HBPP. As the superintendent mentioned, and as we've seen in the bipartisan legislation that was just approved, we need more support for mental health in our communities in order to address the trauma inflicted by violence. And one of the activities the CSEC has undertaken is that this summer, in partnership with our Chicago Department of Public Health, we launched a series of mental health skills building trainings to support local leaders and service providers and faith leaders in our communities that are experiencing high levels of violence. These trainings bring research-informed tools and resources to both traditional and non-traditional service providers, ensuring that they learn strategies to build relationships, create trust and psychological safety, and also learn to use evidence-based activities to help manage stress and emotional dysregulation that can result from trauma and community violence. This includes being able to take these skills and transfer them to those that are at risk of violence in their communities. We are pleased to say that we've already fully trained 154 direct service providers and are currently have over 200 people working through cohorts right now as we launch. Finally, I wanted to talk about something that we're doing to really address the ongoing need for our youth to have safe spaces to gather in their communities. Last week, we rolled out a new series of Saturday night events called Low Key Kickback Saturday Edition. The city has invested over $1 million in youth programming to ensure that we have fun, engaging events for teens on Friday nights, but also now Saturday nights. The CSCC has taken the lead in partnership with the mayor's office to ensure that we have events being held on Saturdays in our parks on the west and the south side from 6 to 9 p.m. These events are a targeted effort to ensure that youth across Chicago have access to engaging activities and necessary resources with their communities. This series will bring free food, free entertainment, and various activities to the south and west side and provide alternative options for our youth and teens right there in their local community. If you want to see a list of the events and where they're going to take place, please go to the My Shy, My Future website. And of course, we always encourage everyone to download the My Shy, My Future app so that you can find the hundreds of youth activities occurring across our city. As always, if you'd like to find out more information about other activities and programs we're running, please visit chicago.gov/CSCC, and thank you to the superintendent for providing us with the opportunity to provide an update. I'll hand it back over.
Thanks, Sam. Before we take questions, I just want to also talk a little bit about some of the notable arrests that we've made over these last few days. We arrested 3 persons for murder over these last few days, 1 for organized retail theft, and 3 for vehicular hijacking, as well as 1 for aggravated battery and 1 for aggravated robbery. So our detectives and our officers are hard at work in bringing violent offenders to justice. And before I take your questions, I just want to reemphasize homicides and shootings are down double digits in the city of Chicago this year. Month to month, July to July, homicides are down 44%, and shootings are down 26%. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Can you provide an update on the off-duty police officer who was shot and murdered?
Yeah, I'm going to have Bureau Detectives Chief Brendan Dehan come up and give a little bit more detail on those incidents.
Sure, so what's your question? Are you asking on the status of the officer?
Yeah, how he's doing.
Yeah, so he's still hospitalized, and he has a long road ahead of him, and he's still paralyzed from the waist down.
And then, can you confirm that CPD Sergeant Michael Rizzaiato has been identified as the person who was accused of putting down a 14-year-old in Parkridge?
So that's continuing to be under investigation. So no conclusions on that investigation yet. As soon as we get a conclusion to that investigation, we'll release more information about it.
Naima Latif with On Air Daily News. And the statistics that you have of the gun violence and the shootings that have occurred, do you have a breakdown as to how many of those shootings occurred with guns that were illegally obtained and those that were legally obtained? And also the source of where they may have been purchased. It's known that many of the shootings are with guns that have been purchased from Chuck's Gun Shop in Indiana. And is there any kind of jurisdiction that the Chicago police have regarding that?
So just from a higher level, we don't have that level of detail for this year's data. We do have data that speaks to the issues you're raising. Are the guns illegal that's used in gun violence? Are the guns bought in Chicago? How many and where in Chicago, if so? And then how many guns are bought in other states? So, just from a high level, most of the guns used in gun violence in Chicago are illegally possessed. In addition, most of the guns that we find as crime guns in Chicago are bought from other states who have more lenient gun laws. And yes, we do have some gun sellers in the city, but the majority of the guns are purchased outside of the state of Illinois, outside of the city of Chicago, that are the drivers of violence in our city. Thank you.
One other question.
Sure.
in those instances where the guns were legally purchased and it might be a case of domestic violence, do you have a strategy to address that kind of thing where the gun owner is legal, but the violence is happening within the home?
I think this speaks to red flag laws that are expanded in the new gun bill that the president signed here recently. We need more red flag laws. We need more background checks. We really need comprehensive background checks for everyone that possesses a gun. But this act that was signed by the president is progress. There hadn't been any significant gun legislation in our country for 30 years. So we'll obviously celebrate the progress as a first step, with many more steps to come. So yes, all of the things you brought up related to, the gun in the home that may be legally possessed. Everywhere there's a gun, there's a potential for violence or accidental uses of that gun when it's not locked and secured properly, or for persons struggling with mental health issues. For that person to have easy access to it is always a recipe for more gun violence. So we support any and all and more legislation related to red flag laws to take guns out of the homes, out of the possession of people who shouldn't possess it.
Mary Normal, Chicago Sun-Times. Regarding the off-duty cop who was shot over the weekend, do you have any details about that incident that you can describe for us?
Sure, that's you can come back up. We've described a lot of it, but we'll add a little bit more.
Thank you.
Sure, so as the superintendent said, and I know that the people were just in bond court today as well, and the state's attorney's office was dealing with that, but the incident, as the superintendent mentioned, there was a disturbance that was inside of a bar, and then that disturbance spilled over into the street, at which point it kind of continued. Somebody had punched somebody and kind of continued down the street, the disturbance, and when it appeared to be over, we had 3 individuals that went to a car and removed a handgun and then passed it to one individual who discharged a firearm, and that's when the off-duty officer was struck, and then someone else received a minor graze wound, and then a second individual, the gun was passed to him and he discharged it as well. And so all 3 offenders were taken into custody and charged.
Do you know how many rounds were fired?
I don't have the number. We definitely picked up, X amount of shell casings, but I don't have that number in front of me. We can get that to you offline.
Sure, thank you.
It was the same one, Brandon?
Say that
It
again.
was the same gun that was
There's
fired?
one gun that was fired, and it was passed between the 3 individuals.
One more question. We had another particularly violent weekend in the downtown area, River North neighborhood in particular. What is the department doing to address this and to continue to look into, that rise in violence in the downtown area?
So, can I just back up a little bit regarding your question? So there's violence that happens in every neighborhood in the city over the weekend. We mentioned it's been a significant decrease in overall gun violence in the city. I don't think it's fair to all communities when you only write headlines about what happens downtown as if gun violence in a neighborhood on the west side or south side less important. So I think it's important to just add that context, that gun violence everywhere is unacceptable. Everywhere in this city is unacceptable. And we need your help in the media in highlighting that, instead of just to focus on the gun violence that happens downtown. Gun violence in downtown is important too, but all neighborhoods should experience a high level of safety, and we're committed to that. One of the things that we've done, obviously, is we've used data to give us decisions about deploying our police resources in coordination with social services and other resources. We do staff our downtown neighborhoods, but we also staff our west side, south side neighborhoods and other neighborhoods throughout the city. We are experiencing a 44% decrease in gun violence, shootings and homicides for July versus July. It is a 26% reduction in shootings, July versus July. It is one of the few cities, I think the only city now, in the country that has double-digit reductions in both shootings and homicides. One shooting is one too many. One is one too many. Anywhere in the city of Chicago, we're committed to doing everything we can as a police department in coordination with all of our partners, to include social services, nonprofits, and others, with violence interrupters, street outreach, to reduce gun violence everywhere. And I heard your question, but I just want you to hear my answer, that all neighborhoods are important. All neighborhoods are important is my response. I hope you quote me on that, and not just focus on one particular neighborhood over another as if one is more important than another, if that makes sense.
Sure, understood,
Okay.
absolutely. I do have just one follow-up to that. When we are talking about the downtown area, I think the reason that a lot of us are focused on it is because of the increase. So is there any?
But I just want you to hear that if I live on the west side, I don't appreciate your focus on just downtown when I have more volume of violence than the downtown does. And then it's a divisive conversation, is my point.
Sure.
It's just a divisive, it's people who live in other parts of the city that receive much more gun violence and historically have had much more gun violence. Their perceptions of how you report the news is as if their neighborhood doesn't matter to Chicago, and it couldn't be further from the truth, particularly for the Chicago Police Department. That couldn't be further from the truth.
Understood. Is there anything in particular that you can attribute this spike in the downtown neighborhood to?
One of the things that we do notice here in Chicago and all across the country, in and around our clubs and bars, we're seeing similar levels of gun violence that haven't been experienced before, at least in the recent past. And so strategies around not just the policing strategy, but what's the strategy in coordination with club owners and bar owners to be included in the safety plan. And we're working through that obviously to include, what traffic plans, vehicular traffic plans can we put in place? What type of camera footage, license plate readers, what other things can we do likely to reduce violence as part of our strategy? The policing effort has been extraordinary. The fact that so many cops are shot every week in this city, it's just been extraordinary, and yet our officers continue to run toward violence. The number of guns recovered, twice as many as NYPD and LAPD recovers combined. So that's why this collaboration with CSCC and other stakeholders is really important, because you can't just police your way out of what is a gun violence epidemic nationally. You have to do it in collaboration, and Chicago obviously is going to continue to collaborate to ensure that we do all we can to reduce gun violence everywhere it occurs, regardless of the neighborhood, everywhere it occurs.
Thank you.
I'm WGN. I just have a quick question. You mentioned, Superintendent, that 34 officers have been shot or shot at this year. 7 of them have been hit by gunfire. How do those numbers compare to last year?
They're up. The last 2.5 years have been the highest on record. So last year was a record, the year before was a record. This year we're on pace to have another record high. It is not just the most difficult time to be the police. It's the most dangerous time to be the police. Not just here in Chicago, but here everywhere in this country. More and more criminals are, not respecting the badge. And we're continuing to see just this brave, courageous effort from our police officers. And we always solicit people in the community just to, when you see a cop, just say thank you for your service, because they're risking everything to protect all of us.
Okay, I do have one other follow-up question. I think it's for this lady. I'm sorry, I can't think of her name.
Tamara Mahal, that's fine.
Yes. You mentioned the Saturday events, and you mentioned $1 million in youth programming. Is the $1 million additional to the Saturday events, or is it combined?
To be clear, the city of Chicago's investment in youth programming is tremendous. We can give you the exact numbers. What I was saying is, we have now dedicated $1 million just to supporting increased activities for youth on Friday and Saturday nights. So that is the budget coming together for both of those. Friday night is they're both part of the Summer Kickback Series, that's part of the My Shine My Future effort. Friday nights are going on in all 15 communities. These are teen-led events that are being funded with groups of 15 or more teenagers actually planning those events. And Saturday nights are now CSCC-led events to help support and supplement additional need for engaging events in our
So
communities.
my question then becomes, it sounds as though the Friday nights have been going on for quite some time. And how successful have they been? Because in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of teens gathering downtown, a lot of teens gathering on beaches. We had somebody shot down, I think it was North Avenue Beach a few weeks ago. So how successful have they been if these things are still happening?
Well, I would just say first and foremost, so the Kickback Series started last summer, and it was a pilot that was so successful based on the feedback we were hearing from community that it was extended through fall break, winter break, spring break, and now has actually just restarted last Friday with a series of events. I will say, from the perspective of youth programming, and I'll let the superintendent address the trends that are going on, that we want to provide additional opportunities so that if someone doesn't want to go down to a trend, that they have a place to go. And so we're starting with this effort. We're going to see, with the addition of Saturday night, I think to your question, is this something that's going to decompress those efforts? Keep in mind the kickbacks are now only starting last week on Friday. This coming Saturday, we're supporting youth going actually to the Silver Room Black Club party, and then our events start the next week. And then I think we'll be able to get back to you on has this helped? But I will just say this, the city has done a tremendous amount of engagement around this issue, both with youth, but also with youth leaders. And the number one thing that we hear back from them is, we just gotta support more activities for youth in the evenings, and so that's what we're aiming to do. Thank you.
The last thing I want to add to that question before we conclude the pressure is juvenile gun violence is declining. Juvenile victimization with gun violence is declining, similarly to the decline in overall gun violence. And so double-digit declines. And compared to last year, compared to last month, all of those metrics are speaking to the fact that, you know, we're doing something that's working. Declines are better than increases. So progress, again, is double-digit progress. And we'll continue to expand where we have other opportunities to engage our young people.
To that point though, I mean, a decline is great, we'd love to see declines everywhere, but even the sheer numbers of youth that are gathering down there is taking up police resources.
It is. But it's not illegal for young people to gather on our beaches or in our downtown. It's not illegal. So again, this effort is progression, it's expanding, and with the metrics of double-digit declines in shootings and homicide victimization of our young people, we'll keep going. And we're, not satisfied. One is one too many. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.